Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thanks for being there. I know it's the last session of the day, as she mentioned, but let's kind of ensure that we'll try and ensure that this topic is pretty interesting. I know cloud is all too close to our heart today. A lot of things are happening around that arena, but let's understand what are the practical realities and how people are actually using cloud as a platform. And I have got a fantastic wide domain out here who can definitely give us a variety of inputs. So, being International Women's Day around the corner, I guess ladies first. So Pooja, how do hybrid and cloud native innovations impact organizations with private cloud environment needs? Your thoughts on that?
Anand, thanks for the question. And yes, when it comes to cloud, what I feel is that each of it has its own benefits and everything growing on its own in terms of new innovations coming in definitely helps. It depends upon what kind of a business are we into. Do we prefer a public cloud, or should we go for a hybrid or even go for a private? It purely depends upon the kind of business we are into. How do we want to scale it? What's our future plans? I think a lot of factors are involved in that. So if you ask me whether, if there are innovations happening on the public and hybrid, how it impacts when we go for a private one, it's just that someone who prefers public, if there are innovations happening, it's good. For someone who's still preferring to go with the private cloud, it has its own advantages in terms of having more scalability. It's more secured. So even if there are developments on the public, private still has its own place. It would continue because there are elements which need to be secured, which we may not get that level of security when it's public. So in my view, private definitely has its own edge in terms of security customizations that we do, the extra controls that we can bring in, overall performance efficiency that we can look at. And of course, the cost element definitely is something that we may compare, but at the end of it, it's what your application that you're looking at, your business model. And accordingly, even if there are innovations on the other side, private still continues to have its own edge, depending, again, the same thing, your business model, what is it that we are looking for? So that's what I feel.
So what has been the experiences at Aditya Birla?
So in Aditya Birla, it's been a mix. Okay, so for few areas, traditionally we continued with the on-prem as well. Gradually, we are moving on to cloud. Even on cloud, now for certain applications, we've gone ahead with complete private. For few, it is still hybrid. We are in the process of moving to private. One advantage of hybrid would be because we've been traditionally working on the on-prem. So the hybrid helps us to gradually come out of that loop, and then we move to complete private. So there is a gradual progression towards private. Again, not all applications would move to private because depending upon the security, the criticality, the commercial aspect involved. So we have a mix currently here, and my experience throughout in Aditya Birla has been that there has been a conscious call taken which all applications to be moved depending upon the category it falls into in terms of security, scalability, flexibility that we need in that application, and real-time turnarounds. A call is being taken, whether we be completely private or we still want to continue with hybrid for certain applications. So it's a mix.
Thank you so much. I think that's pretty insightful. Coming to Basil, and he being from similar domain as mine, from the asset management business, the next question to you is, like she talked about, scaling up, building a lot of applications, depending on what the use cases are. But then how to build modern applications fast, right, and for the future. What tools, have seen more adoptions so far? So what are the varieties that has been your experiences seen?
Good evening all. Thank you, Anand. So, see, first of all, to improve to make the organizations adopt on the cloud front, first we need to understand, okay, what exactly the business is trying to solve the problem. So it's not that the cloud is more secure or on-prem is more secure. It depends on totally on the business, what's the problem area they want to secure, whether it's availability, whether it's security, whether it's compliance, agility, what exactly they want to solve. And accordingly, we can take a decisions, okay, whether the cloud is a better options or the on-prem, as Pooja highlighted. So depends on the organization's requirement. If they see, okay, this is the solutions which can sustain for the longer period of time on the on-prem, then go for on-prem, or if it is for the less interval of time. So I'll just give you an example, okay, like for example, if there is any e-commerce website, okay, so normally we go on e-commerce, we do a search for the particular item. So those things for the searching and all that, so those small database we can keep on the cloud because that's near to the users, okay, and that the performance which will be much faster. And whenever the users are add those items on the cart, and when do a transaction, we can have those kind of data on premises. So that users can also get the feel that the performance is faster, and at the same time we can also have the security, because as you talk about ROI, if you keep on keeping the data on the cloud for the longer period of time, I'm sure no one will deny that it will be a costlier affair to have those over the cloud. Okay, and you talk about the efficiency, like whenever you are designing anything over the cloud, you need to have three things. Similarly, that is applicable for on-prem as well: privacy, security, and the speed. So how my data is kept as taking care of the privacy, how secure it is, and the speed. Okay, so no one want to have the solution which run in the similar way on prem and on the cloud. If you're adopting on the cloud, because normally we sell those things to the management. If you move to the cloud, the performance will be the better. So like in case if the performance is same over the cloud, I doubt that the manager will be approving our next call for that. So speed, again, I'll just refer to like in one of the scenarios. Okay, so I was roaming on the floor. So I saw a guy, he has kept an analog watch on the mouse. Okay, so I like, तेरे को इतनी जल्दी है क्या mouse के ऊपर घड़ी रख के तो देख रहा है? So he was like, नहीं भाई, ये जो machine है ना lock हो जाती है. Okay, and to unlock that machine, it's taking a time. So to avoid those things, he was keeping a mouse so that it keep the cursor sufficient enough that machine is not getting locked. So that's what, like, so whenever we are implementing any solutions, we should also consider, okay, how easy is for the users for the adoption. So like you talk about the tools, like whenever you are designing, you should be having some kind of framework which is light, okay, like the microservices architectures which is normally adopted on the cloud. So like having a REST API for that matter, so that whenever each API can function individually, like unlike the monolithic architectures, so each can do their own individual task. We see on Ola and Uber, so like whenever we do a clicking, each API makes a different calls, and it gives a better experience to the user. So in terms of tools adoptions, I have seen a lot of, like, whenever any company goes on the cloud, the first solutions with security professional, they suggest to have a cloud security posture management, which is one of the solutions, because I come from the security background. So this is one of the solutions. For the workload protections, this is the solutions. Then I can see there is a lot of adoptions on whenever the images are getting downloaded from the cloud, because we have seen that in case of containers or Docker, the image which we download from GitHub, we have seen it is the most vulnerable image. So scanning those kind of image, we need certain kind of solutions around that. So that's what, like whenever you are deciding, you need to consider this thing. And before I conclude, I'll say the cloud can cause our organizations perform a mistake at the faster interval, because at the same time when you move to the cloud, you can also make a lot of mistakes. So we need to follow the security baselining, the guidelines whenever we are moving to the clouds, and there should be quick tie-up between IT, business, as well as the security team. All should go in hand, because sometimes there is a business having a different requirement. IT will be thinking on something in the different direction, so it can again cause maximum damage to the organizations.
Yeah, thanks for that. I know it's not that easy to just, plug and play on cloud, and the business demands always keeps changing. And how do we ensure that? So for that, I guess, Akshay Kumar, I would like to ask you a question on, in the digital world, how to unlock the value of IT service management. End of the day, there are multiple cloud service providers, and there is a managed service partner, and everybody says, I am doing cloud, I'll give you the best service, I'll be giving. So what kind of engagements do we need to be clear about, when we kind of engage with these MSPs, CSPs of the world? What are the, touch points that we need to be careful about so that we end up with a seamless experience and not just, ending up, because there are some plethora of services at the back end and we really don't know what to do, what not to do. Yeah.
As far as we are concerned, we are on cloud from 2019 onwards, so we don't have a data center. We moved it all out, and we have run it in a way that it needs to be managed. So very clearly business priorities. So what's the business priorities, as we all know? Robust, scalable, 24/7 availability, and all that security things that we keep doing. The most important thing on understanding the cloud infrastructure is how quickly can you move. And the most important thing when you say scalability, flexibility, robust, and all those activities, it also ties up with who your provider is, your understanding of the cloud. How much of cloud architecture, cloud design have you understood? And also the fundamentals. Let's like you say, today you say edge computing, which was there almost 25 years back when you had a branch banking and a server. So all those things don't make sense today. What you need to understand is latency and other things, what your application does, how cool your application is. If your application doesn't support cloud infrastructure, then whatever you do, you will still continue to have a problem. So that's one of the key things that you need to understand from an internal point of view. Then when you tie up with MSPs, you really need to understand how, when, what, the normal 5 questions of how, when, what, and what they will do and what kind of service they will provide, how will they man. The most important thing today is, which I like in this last few years that I have been engaging in this part of the world on cloud, is basically on the DevOps, Sec and DevOps kind of a thing. So how much of these things can be automated? What is their efficiency in doing this thing? What is their experience in managing the DevOps kind of an architecture? Because yes, you can do it on your own, you can outsource it. Now cloud as a platform is 24/7, it's available throughout. It has got its own replication, it has got its own backup, recovery, disaster, all those things are already set up. So now what you want to do is, how do you manage each of these areas? So how efficient are they? And as you rightly said in the earlier point, that once you put on the cloud, then it becomes a very expensive proposition as we go along. But there are ways of managing it also very effectively and efficiently. So you need to understand from the vendors, because most likely they would always come back and say, no, this cannot be done, that cannot be done. But the utilization, the RRPOs and all those kind of terminologies which we use are something which is very important. Can we bring down the compute? Can we bring down the disk time? Can we bring out what's the IO? What's the IOPS which are there? So if we understand all these fundamentals, and believe me, between clouds, there is a huge amount of difference in the way each bus architecture works, each IOPS works. So that's why I said you need to go back to your fundamentals of 8086 to understand how a bus architecture and who's designed that. So unless you get into these kind of details and managing the entire thing via automation, it becomes a barrier. So you need to select a vendor who has this capability. Secondly, who are the vendors who can actually provide you with the flexibility that you need. The reason for going up cloud is how quickly can you go. Otherwise, you could have had the traditional VM structure. That means with a CIS-based architecture, with a CIS-based infrastructure, can you get it up in 2 hours, 4 hours? What kind of flexibility you get on that? How cool are you to when you're tuning your machines? Because most of the times between mornings or in the afternoons, the compute power needed is less. Whereas in the evening, when the financial services, at least I can say, where you do end-of-day processing and many of those things, that's when you start requiring compute power. Or on an asset and investment management, whenever there is a corporate action which hits you, and 2 or 3 of them are big ones, and you have 20, 25 years of data with that kind of a thing, that's when you need a faster compute. You need a premium disk kind of things. So all these are areas which you need to discuss and define with the service provider. If we don't get into these kind of details and get into it, that's a very important point. The second important point is also from a range of security. How good is your security? You can have all your CISAs and all those kind of people in-house, but at the end of the day, when it is on the cloud, what kind of architecture do they have? What is their selection? How do we do it? what can you do about each and every level of security and how much of the ISO standards they follow. So whether it's an ISO 27001 or whether it's an ISO 2018 for cloud infrastructure or all those kind of things, you need to really understand their capability on doing that and also your organization's limitations and capabilities. If you are clear about all these kind of things, then I don't think it's a problem. And the most important thing is trusting the MSP and questioning. It's not the money point of view. It's not the amount of money that you pay. It's the amount of services that the customer, the MSP is able to deliver. And you in the backend need to deliver back to your internal clients. Again, that is also, we are the service providers for the internal business. So how quickly can you define all these things? How quickly can you put these things together? For that, you require a huge amount of information. You need to be good in that at the lowest level of understanding data and architecture. And once you do that, and you can discuss with the cloud vendor, and I find that very important because not many of them get into the detail. And unless you have a true cloud architect who actually sits with you and defines, not the pure sales guys, absolutely no. You need to have the cloud architect sitting with you to actually define each and every level, provided you know your application well. So these are some of the important aspects which I think are very important once you get into this cloud kind of a scenario. And I think it's an interesting space and a lot of learning for us as well. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, sir rightly mentioned while moving to the cloud, but we also need to see how quickly we can come back in case of any scenarios to on-prem. Okay, so I think that should be also one of the criteria. Because recently we are seeing lot new service providers coming into picture. Today only I got a mail from L&T. L&T has also come into the cloud space. So there are a lot of players coming. We have to see what are the security postures. Okay, it's not about only the hosting the data. We also need to see from the legal side what will be the complications in case of disaster and the service what we have. Because recently, everyone will agree, because recently circular from SEBI, which is still in the draft, SEBI is asking to have the visibility up to hypervisor level. They want the logs up to a hypervisor level. Can we provide those kind of logs in case if the regulator asked the detail from us? So those kind of also contractual or whatever the visibility we need to have whenever we are deciding on the cloud providers.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, it's a very complex subject matter. When you go and see deeply into these contracts, it's very essential that you know what exactly is the service that is going to be provided, and the SLA based, whether it's going to be SLA based or, great inputs there. Next question to Kapil. So how much transformational business value has actually been seen in cloud adoption? Are we able to visualize the ROI? I mean, everybody knows that, cloud things work seamlessly and stuff like that. And the monthly billing happens, you wonder, hey, is this the right thing to be done? But then what has been your experiences on this, and what do you feel is the right approach?
Sure. Thanks for the question. Hi, everyone. So I think a lot of value has already been delivered due to cloud and the modernization that we do as part of cloud adoption. Values such as greater agility and probably faster business innovation that we have already kind of realized in the past few years. So I wouldn't say that you can really save costs by moving to the cloud because I think the early wave of cloud migrations was driven by the promised land kind of thing, right? You move there and you just reduce cost. But I think what we do get, and from my experience that I see in Axis Bank, we've been able to better manage cost, right? On a monthly basis, we are able to see the bill, and in a more agile fashion, we are able to then manage the cost better than on an on-prem traditional sort of world. So if we think about where do we go from here, what's the next leap of providing business value? I think the next, technologies such as AI/ML will enable new business models and will enable new revenue streams for the banks. And this will lead to a wave of transformational business value versus just going to the cloud for higher scalability, flexibility. It will be an enabler for transformational change. And if I speak about in Axis Bank, thousands of variants of personalized nudges have been delivered as part of the best customer experience app in the world. And we are evaluating blockchain and some immersive technologies to be able to deliver these new customer experiences and efficiencies in the process flow. We also kind of focusing on looking at what are the latest innovations in the cloud native space and trying to optimize our infra and operations. Cloud native doesn't always mean cloud service provider provided, CSP provided. Cloud native can mean outside of the CSPs. So I think all these trends would enable the next leap of providing business value.
Has the Access City, mergers been easier thanks to some bit of cloud adoption at your end?
Yeah, so I think legally, like you've seen in the news, we're part of Citibank is part of Axis Bank just this week, right? But a lot of work still needs to be done as we now move on as a consolidated entity. But a lot of the transformational platforms that we have on the data side have been instrumental in making sure that the next leg where we work as a unified bank is going to be less painful as it would have been otherwise.
Great. Now I come to one of the larger cloud service provider themselves, and let's get some inputs from Unni out here, who's from Oracle. So multi-cloud, cloud migration, integration, security, how to make all of this work seamlessly, as a single, cycle, without any disruption anywhere, or how do you make this actually happen? Because everybody wants some bit of cloud somewhere to happen, and there are so many legacy systems out there. People want to just do lift and shift, or what is it? How to make this all really work? You have innovations, you have containers, serverless environments, edge computing. How to finally, stitch all of this together and bring about, end of the day, it's the customer experience, right? Which finally matters. So whatever you do, and if the systems don't work, it's like, what is it? So.
Hey, thanks, Anand. I think the toughest question with all the jargons has been put to me. So being an Oracle. So multi-cloud is the buzzword, right, today. Everyone wants to get into the multi-wagon of multi-cloud. My feeling is multi-cloud is either by strategy or it's an accident. Okay, so if you look today, it's mostly an accident, because today you see a lot of financial institutions, they are actually building up cloud strategies. There are banks and they already have some cloud strategy, but it's a continuous refinement of that particular strategy document, which would essentially culminate into a proper, cloud adoption. As per Gartner report, almost 81% of enterprises want to go to multi-cloud. Okay, that's what Gartner says. But if you look today about the cloud adoption, only 30% of workloads are there on cloud. So that means there is still 70% of workloads which can essentially go to cloud, and hence you have more players in the cloud business. Okay, so it's a huge market. Okay. So moving to public cloud essentially gives you, a lot of features. It's a comprehensive set of feature set, right? So if you look at Oracle Cloud, security first design, if you do a, fast connect, there is zero egress cost. you have a cost benefit when you do flexible infrastructure. If you run a block volume, if you want to increase or decrease the IOPS, you have that flexibility. So these capabilities are like, fantastic capabilities, right? Which essentially you don't essentially find in on-premise boxes, right? So there's a lot of innovation which goes into, at the end of the day, it is a hardware, it's a commodity hardware. But there are brains who would essentially build that layer on top of it, which would make life easier for customer to use those resources. Okay. Now, I spoke about Oracle Cloud. Essentially, there are differentiators with other cloud providers also. Now, is that enough? Probably not. We don't think so. What we feel is other cloud providers and Oracle Cloud, there should be an enablement wherein they work together. Okay. Multi-cloud is about working together. Okay, I cannot have Oracle workloads running on Oracle and then customer have other workloads running somewhere and it's a multi-cloud. No, there should be an option wherein they can think of running a layer on one cloud, an Oracle database on Oracle. So what's the missing link? The missing link is that connectivity. Okay, so it has to be made so easy wherein the other cloud partners can connect seamlessly with Oracle Cloud. That will essentially, now look at a scenario, you have a connectivity between one CSP and other CSP with a sub 2 millisecond latency. That is good enough for you to split the app tier on one CSP and the DB tier on another CSP. So you have that flexibility. That means you can decide. You are not stuck with one technology. You can essentially play around. You can look at what works well for you. So we are working very closely with a lot of CSPs essentially to build that connectivity. That is the most important part when it comes to multi-cloud. Rest comes later. That is one part. I don't know how many of you have heard in Oracle Cloud World in October, we launched something called as Oracle Alloy. Okay, it's a very new infrastructure cloud platform. What we are doing is, we are saying that it enables service providers, integrators, ISVs, organizations like financial institutions, telecommunication providers, to be a cloud provider. Now look at that angle. We are saying that you as an ISV, you have a market, I will give you the cloud. So they are actually being, mentored to get into cloud business. So they can essentially be a cloud provider and provide those services to their customers, right? So they can have Alloy as an independent services as part of their data center. So these are a lot of innovations when it comes to cloud. So it's not just one, data center where you have a region. Things have gone beyond that. There is a lot of thought when it comes to, can I talk to competition, right? In what way customer is benefited with that. That's the crux of it. And today Oracle is doing a lot of work when it comes to multi-cloud features. Okay, some of them are already released. So there is interconnect already available in some of those data centers. So that's the key when it comes to multi-cloud.
So, but what has been the experiences in terms of how much positivity has come out of all this? And people are ready to...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have tremendous, response from the market. As you know, there are multiple offerings, like as Pooja said, right, hybrid. Today you want a hybrid box. Can I ship it to your data center? Forget about that. Today you are saying that as a regulation, I don't want to go to public cloud. Okay, I have a data center. Can I bring the cloud to my data center? These are options. And these have got, tremendous market response. It's happening.
Great. Yes, end of the day, when we talk of data moving to the cloud, we need to ensure that things are completely secure. Or that I think the initial adoption was a lot more because we were not really sure how the security is. But since we have a CISO here, I would like to ask Basil one important question is, what are the current, and promising strategies to address security, privacy, and governance? Is there a tick box which is there, as a simple framework that can be applied on all the cloud adoptions that you do, or are they kind of varied and different? Is there a DevSecOps framework? How much of that is gathering adoption, and where do you see it going to?
So yeah, right. I can see it is getting adopted because as I mentioned on the initially, like whenever any services goes on the cloud, so as per security baselining, it is like what are the kind of security policies implemented on that. So initially we were struggling. Okay, I'll be blunt. So we were struggling. What should be the policy? Then we onboarded CSPM solutions. Then we have gone through a lot of CSPM solutions, and on that basis, we understand what are the security policies should be there. And accordingly, we also drafted the security framework, which need to be enabled on the cloud. So simple like S3 bucket, it should not be published over the cloud, so it should be private. Until unless it is required only for the object storage, ECU into instance, what should be the encryption method, what should be the key rotation cycles. So as Uni also mentioned that on the hybrid cloud, so because we are also looking at those kind of journeys, like we don't want to depend only on the single cloud. Like we saw the recent outage from Microsoft for O365. Suppose if that is the case for complete O365 Microsoft architecture goes down, then what is the option? Like you will be having a redundancy within their same AZ, but you cannot bring your business up. So that's one of the approach what I've seen on the industry also. There are a couple of banks which are already trying that they want to have DC on one or the application on the one of the service provider, and the backup should be on the different service providers. But I still see there are some challenges around that, because the CSPM solutions what I have seen through the market, or the security solution, because AWS was adopted at the initial stage. The security controls what I see on the AWS at getting mature compared to the other solution provider. Only sorry for that, but I have seen those trends in the market. And parallelly, but we are seeing the adoptions around the security platforms.
Yeah, and one last, yeah.
Yeah, I think, like my co-panelist said, I would like to add that the dream of multi-cloud is a dream, and it's difficult to get it right. Right, it does provide benefits like better resilience, less vendor lock-in, and so forth. I think one of the key strategies that I believe is important is to try and have a single control plane at the center of all multi-clouds. And so that, like Basil said, the policies should be consistent across the CSPs, so that you could define those at the center. But like anything, it's easier said than done. It is difficult to get that right. And generally, with a single control plane for your networking and security at the center, it does evolve with time. And you want to do it in a reduced complexity cloud native way, which again does not mean that always a CSP cloud native way. Like for example, in Axis Bank, we are experimenting with new trends in this area, like SASE, which is essentially a combination of WAN, network edge computing, and security services provided sort of as a service, right? And I feel that that is more in line with the demands of modern business than our traditional network hardware. So that is few things to kind of experiment with, understand what does it give you in a multi-cloud environment, and then selectively apply.
Yeah. So before I sign off, just last one question to all the panelists. You can start from Uni and then finish off with the lady here. Will legacy be history soon? Your thoughts, all of you.
So it will take some time. It's not because there is that change happening, wherein I know of banks who have started I know banks who have started building their own IT teams, okay, and they've started writing their own core banking, okay, and in completely, open source kind of technologies, okay. Now, the reason indicated is that, today with current core banking or any legacy systems which are there, one is supporting those systems. Second is, if I need to make some changes, obviously there needs to be someone who understands it and then, impart it. So resource issues. And third is, if I have to make some changes, it's going to take me like 6 months. I get a ridiculous, change request. Okay. So the entire landscape is changing, wherein the thought is there whether, hey, I can build it. Okay. I know banks who have made a consortium of 7 banks. And all 7 banks are essentially building a core banking which will be used by those 7 banks. Okay? And the key point is that it has to be microservices oriented, it has to be modular. If I want to plug and play a feature, it has to be that simple. So those days is not far away. So today, if I look at cloud, right, it is changing like every 15 days. So today, if I know something about Oracle Cloud, after 15 days, I don't know anything about Oracle Cloud because it's changing that fast. And the same goes with any other cloud service provider. So today, in banks, the IT landscape is changing like hell. I know of banks where 56, 60 projects are running in parallel. That's the volume in which, innovations are happening. Okay, and it's going to be crazy. Yeah, yes, but then, to be on the safer side, you would essentially run that for some time. And it's probably a year and a half, things will start moving.
Yeah.
Thanks. So I think I agree with that. It is going to be a mixed bag. There are some banks who are going to move to the cloud faster. You could start with making sure that all your new applications are being built on the cloud versus some of the challenge comes like my co-panelist from Oracle mentioned with the core banking platforms. What gets spoken about is strategy of following the core, right? So it's about, having this old set of legacy apps that you cannot immediately change, together with some of the newer satellite pieces in an event-driven fashion, which you can go and incrementally change. Then the challenge is, how do you go with the old and the new? How do you bridge between the old and the new? And then there are theories about implementing an orchestrator hub in the middle, right? So that is one approach to do it by architecture. Then the other approach that I've seen in the industry is to radically go a little bit more aggressive, and for certain segments like maybe small deposits where the risk is less, go to the digital native core banking platforms directly, right? Learn from that experiences and then see if you can then migrate more of your core banking components to that digital native platform. So, multiple strategies. I think it will take some time, but we'll eventually see a bigger rush towards the cloud.
Yeah. Kishan.
No, I do take all these points, and I do agree with Uni on many of the areas. And one of the classic cases is the Microsoft tie-up with Oracle for the database. And I'm still awaiting when that will happen and when that is going to come to India. And that's really an important thing, because if you're using platforms and if you're able to segregate things, that would be a true way in which a cloud functions. So a multi-cloud kind of an environment where I get the best of the Oracle database world and I use whatever is my cloud, and how do I integrate it, that is seamless. And of course, changes in licensing policies and all those things come into play, but that's secondary. Okay, let's look at it more from a higher level of cloud integration, and that's something which we already see. And as I stated earlier, when you look at applications, none of these applications today, most of the whether in the financial sector, let me be honest, whether it's banking or any of these things, are written with cloud native components. They are all traditional components with applets and then move to the browser and things like that with the traditional million lines of code, 60 million, 50 million lines of code, which has been erased, reversed, and done whatever it is. I mean, messed it up completely. So few banks in Europe have done it, and I think one of the banks, I think it's either Sweden or Denmark, one of them, which actually rewrote the entire core banking software. And of course, if you break it up further, with the advent of blockchain and other things coming in and Web3, basically, I'm more excited about the Web3 architecture which actually comes in. So if you break up the whole banking structure, you can let's trade finance, which are payments, which are more in line with third-party engagements, third-party architecture. Blockchain is a perfect way of doing things. And with the new Web3 coming in, I don't know why we need to still work with traditional elements. And the Swift also changing, payment gateways changing, especially when I worked on with R3 and Corda and Ethereum, they had a real different way of doing things. So that's going to be a hyper change. The other important area which I see is the rewriting of applications. And if you want to rewrite applications, I think the cloud is the better way. As he rightly put it, innovations and other things you can do only when you have access to these kind of things. And of course, today with more and more security, as he said, need to be built in. That flexibility can only be done when you start developing and managing your own applications. Today, getting some application vendor to provide all the kind of some BAPT and other tests, which, sorry, I'm not a security guy, so I can't say that, but much of the things, probably your domain, which happens, many of them don't qualify to the last extent. I mean, they might qualify to a 70%, 80%, but then we also question, why do you have all these things when you don't use them? No, we can't remove it. Some kind of a stupid answer comes out on that point. So all those kind of things are something which but I see a huge transformation. I think the partnership between whether it's Microsoft and Oracle or tomorrow with AWS and some other vendors coming in, more and more applications getting written on the cloud-based, cloud-native kind of an architecture. I wouldn't call cloud native. I think using the cloud as the fundamental architecture, because that itself kills many of the problems today that we face in the industry, and also the way in which you can write your applications in a more structured, modular, commoditized manner, which is more or less today a monolith. That monolith is just said that, okay, you can break it up here, you can break it up there, you can put this component. Technically, it's not. The database is the same. The application layer is one which is being switched. But the whole flexibility that you get, and of course, the whole open architecture, which I'm sure all of you are fans, nobody wants a closed-end architecture. So the whole open architecture makes a difference. AI, ML, of course, no questions about that. That's the most debated topic. But these are the fundamental areas where I feel the cloud actually makes a lot of difference.
Thank you so much.
I can see we are using hybrid, so I think legacy will still continue, as Uni also mentioned, for some time, because there are a lot of dependency. The person for particular organizations like us, the person who has written the code is no more with the organizations. Okay, so we have to write everything from scratch. So it is like building a new application, but whatever the new application which is getting built, I'm sure that's getting adopted based on the microservices or next generation's framework. But still I see where we have a dependency that some of the applications, like majorly in the banks, they have dependency on Infosys for the Finacle. There is a dependency on TCS. So those kind of applications where we don't have visibility and integrated with ESB and all that for making a transactions, I think those kind of legacy systems will be there in our organization for some time. But over the period of time, I think everyone will be moving for this solutions where we'll be having a complete visibility of whatever is getting written, because we have burned our hands where we don't have the codes, where we have the IP which has been owned by third party. But organizations have learned those mistakes, and now whatever things are getting developed, it is going in the CMDB and the code repository, and everything is getting tracked on that front.
Yeah, so even I agree. I think they've covered most of it, and more or less I think we all are aligned largely to the idea that legacy, yes, definitely would continue for some time. It's not that easy to completely do away with it. As Basil mentioned, that even in Aditya Birla, for the financial services unit, we still have a hybrid model. We also have on-prem solutions. So while we go for SaaS adoption for a lot of our applications, so there is a dependency, of course, on the vendor. How are they maintaining the cloud version of it? So the security aspect becomes very, very important there. And these applications also talk to a lot of our other peripheral systems that we have, which are a mix both on cloud as well as on-prem. So one other important aspect, which even Unnikrishnan mentioned, that in terms of skill set, it's very much important to have the right skill set for building it on our own, which is also at times scarce. And even the overall architecture, I feel that's quite important, because when we have to ensure that security plus the current legacy, how will these two be taken care of considering the security aspect? So this is my view. I feel this will definitely continue for some more time. But yes, the core applications are all moving onto cloud. The gradual transition would happen, but that would be like a transformation is what I feel.
Yeah, so we come to the end of this panel discussion, and I think we got some fantastic insights. I think the cloud service partners, providers need to be kind of taking note of what the others, all of us have kind of said, and probably work as collaborative partners with other cloud service providers and see to it that they come across solutions which are, common to all of us, rather than, looking at competition to each other, try and see how they can deliver business values by working together with all of us. Yeah. Thank you so much. Any questions? Anyone? I guess we can take a few questions. We have some time left, so.
Just a suggestion only, all the CSPs should have the common nomenclature. किसको ये EC2 बोलते हैं, किसमें VMware बोलते हैं. That's creating a lot of confusion. So probably you should also have services referred to as a common name across all the providers.
Probably you should look at Oracle Cloud. So
we are already on OCI.
So if you look at OCI, right, it is very simplified. So there is no T-shirt size computes. So there is no 100 line items, right? It is just Intel, it is just AMD. You get to pick how many OCPUs, how many RAM. So we have simplified a lot of things. And probably looking at that, even competition will try to do a lot of things. So hopefully at some point in time, we would lead and they will start copying us.
Hoping so.
Yeah, thank you all. Thanks so much.